Welcome to the Grandpa Channel. I'm Steve Harris, but my grandkids call me Rivers. Here we ask a simple question. What did life teach you the hard way? Because a lifetime reveals things you can't learn any other way. On this show, we sit down with people who've lived a little, stumbled a little, and learned a few things along the way. So pull up a chair, because what a lifetime reveals can steady another. Good morning and welcome
Good morning. So good to be here.
and welcome to the Grandpa Channel. We have
Hey,
an amazing guest. Her name is Emily Snyder Burrup. She comes highly recommended by my daughter, Emily. Give us a little bit of a sense of who you are, a little bit of the arc of your life.
yeah, great. Maybe I'll go a little bit backwards. I got married in October of 2024, for my
Mhm.
first marriage to a
Congratulations.
thank you, and to a great man who is a widower. His wife had passed about 4.5, 5 years before we met. His daughter actually set us up. She heard me speaking at a women's conference and didn't know her, but she slid into my DMs of
Yeah.
Instagram and asked if I would be willing to go out with her dad.
Wow.
Got married. So I became a wife for the first time and a bonus mom. And then 6 months after that, became a grandmother.
Wonderful.
Lots of newness. Before that, I've had a variety of different chapters is what I like to say of my career. I started out as an elementary school teacher in a low income area in Utah, and then um, got to go work in Boston for Clayton Christensen at the Harvard Business School, who was one of the top business thinkers during his time.
Which is
And
all too
then
short.
say that
All
again.
too short. All too short a time.
Oh, way too short. Yeah, it was actually his birthday yesterday.
Oh,
So
was it really?
he loved McDonald's. So my yearly outing to McDonald's to get milkshakes and fries. With him, I realized there was a bigger life than I had ever anticipated. And so ended up getting my MBA at Columbia Business School, and where I got to meet your beautiful daughter. And then I worked for Chip and Joanna Gaines out in Waco, Texas at Magnolia. Somebody had asked me because I was a very old MBA candidate and I don't want to do the consulting thing. I don't want to do the banking thing that typically comes out of Columbia. And somebody said, well, what are you passionate about? Who's doing something you're excited about? And I said, I'm so intrigued with Chip and Joanna Gaines and what they're creating and how they're making home and family socially acceptable again. And so kind of wiggled my way in with Levain cookies from New York City that I took to Waco and convinced somebody to talk to me, got to work with them for about 3.5 years.
Really?
And then COVID hit. I was living as a single female in Waco, Texas, and thinking if the world's ending, I'm not interested in dying by myself. So came home to Utah where my family is and started working back again for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in a totally different department. And then because getting married is not new enough and moving into my husband's world, I quit that job and was a chief of staff at a software company for almost a year. And I just left last week and I'm creating my own consulting and executive coaching business.
That's going to be the focus of your consulting firm.
I'm really fascinated and want to target launching moments. So whether it's an individual that's ready to kind of launch who they are or kind of level up, whether it's a rebranding and a relaunching of a company, whether it's a new company that's trying to launch a new product or a book, like I just am thrilled with the concept of launching. And then the reality, there's a lot of emotional preparedness skills. So that's where the executive coaching comes into play. But then flip side, if you start with executive coaching, there's going to be some structures in life and the businesses that are going to have to evolve as that executive shows up differently. And so then the ops and the strategy and the marketing come into play to do the consequential of whatever entry point, there's consequences. And so I want to be prepared for both of those for launching people.
I could tell you'd be great at it.
Well, thanks. There are a few moments in life that I've been so excited about
Really?
the prospects. Yeah. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So let's dive into the big question. And that is, with the arc of your story as the background, What did life teach you the hard way, Emily?
Yeah.
And I want you to be specific.
Yeah. Well, in a short phrase, and I dream about writing a book with this title, Own Your Damn Life. If there was a mantra or a t-shirt or a phrase that I could just like, own your damn life. Nobody, as much as we have loved ones and as much as we have a village around us, nobody cares about your life the way you have to. And I think we hope oftentimes that somebody else is going to help carry that or navigate it for us, and all the best intents, and if people can care and love us, but they have to carry their own life, and so they can't carry my life. And so I think in really tricky moments of realizing my boss isn't in charge of my life, my boss isn't going to help me, he or she will be as gracious and hopefully as wonderful as they can to help me grow. But that's not their job. And it's not my parents' job. It's not a partner's job. It is only my job to make my life the life I want. So in all the different broken moments of careers and relationships, and the realization when I was 35 of marriage may not be happening, I needed to own it myself, has been the most liberating, most beautiful journey and adventure since I owned it, to be like, own your damn life.
So how does, I love it. And by the way, put me down as your very first buyer of your book, okay?
Thank you. Thank you. My mom has to read it, and it's nice to know that you'd be willing to.
I would love to. I think it'd be a great book. Were there some other, examples of experiences that you had in addition to the 35 and you're not married, what do I do, sort of a thing?
There was one. So I'm a religious person, and I really love God, and I'm pretty particular about the media that I bring into my life. And there was a good season that I was reading a lot of Christian historical fiction books. Like, there's a publishing company called Bethany House that always did a faith-based, God was a part of it, and they were Christian romance in historical fiction, which is like boom, boom, boom. I'm learning a little bit about, a different world, and there's a love and there's a God. There was one in particular. It's basically Hallmark with God in a book. There was one. Concept. I know, right? Before Hallmark became all that we love about Hallmark. There was one book I was reading about a single woman that was a little bit older, and she was just she was like, that's it, I'm getting married. Like, I'm over this waiting thing. And so she very deliberately pursued the single men in her town. And it was like a Western, so it was definitely a town. And nobody was interested. And then this handsome stranger saunters into town, not the best lifestyle perhaps, and seduces her. And because it's a Christian romance novel, there wasn't a lot of details, but nonetheless, she fell for him and lowered her standards. And her dad made a comment in this book that says, is it more important to you to get married or to follow Jesus Christ? Whoa. And I literally threw the book across the room. I was livid because for the first time in my life, those two things were decoupled. Because my whole growing up, the path of discipleship is marriage in the community that I was raised in. And I think for many conservative religious communities, there is no other option for success as a disciple of whatever faith that is. Marriage and family is an essential component, whether it's Muslim or Christian or Jewish. That is an essential piece. And it was the first time in my life the idea and the reality could be disciple of Jesus Christ would not mean marriage. And I was ticked, and I was so mad, and I felt so betrayed by and my faith and everything. And it was a long night of wrestle and deep soul searching and frustration and so many tears and so much anger, which is so silly that it would come from this Christian romance novel. But it was obviously a very defining moment to realize in many, many ways, the path that I had anticipated may not be an option. Because if I want this, they just decoupled is the best way I know how to think about it, is that all of a sudden for the first time, things were separated. And I had to acknowledge in that moment Was marriage more important to me in life, or was following Jesus Christ? And it was a game changer. It was a complete game changer for me that I chose Jesus Christ, and I will be a disciple of my faith and of my God, come what may, no matter what the circumstances bring. This is what I'm choosing, and this is what I'm going to trust in the long run. And it's had other iterations and other mourning processes of that reality, but it has been the best decision and the best explanation point, I think, of who I ultimately want to be.
Wow. I don't know what to say. That's so wise.
Well, it was definitely defining.
Wow.
Yeah.
Has there been a mistake that has shaped you more than maybe some of your successes?
Yeah.
People would say, oh my gosh, she worked for Chip and Joanna Gaines for 3.5 years. Have there been some mistakes where you really learned
Yeah.
from them?
Maybe, I mean, I guess as you say that, the things I'd been thinking about, one would be staying in relationships or friendships too long. But I think the ultimate answer is, um, again, to my thesis statement of owning my damn life,
Mhm.
and maybe in a more beautiful, positive way, owning my most glorious life. I'm the driver, and allowed friendships to go too long, allowed work scenarios, not negative or anything tragic, but just they weren't the right fits, and I wasn't being able to grow or be my best version, or I didn't have the hard conversations to be able to grow and have those. I think would be the greatest mistakes, of that I was waiting for too long for too many people to be in charge of something,
Mhm.
whether it was a boss and expecting my boss to be a boss when maybe they didn't know how to be a boss, or knowing what they needed and having that conversation. Any of the things, I think, are probably because I wasn't willing to have the hard conversation to clarify what was needed, what was expected on both sides, and what I was needing and what I was expecting, and just letting somebody else drive my experience would be my greatest mistake, I think.
What do you think gets in the way, Emily, of people not owning their damn life?
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think one piece in particular is I don't know that we've ever been given permission. I think at least growing up, I was in California. In the neighborhood I was in, you played soccer and you swam. Those were the two things that we did. And so I all of a sudden was playing soccer, and I didn't know how to play soccer. Just the reality of, I couldn't understand while my parents were yelling on the sidelines of like, be aggressive, go, 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 go get the ball, and be in their face, when as soon as I'm off the field, the ask and expectation is to be kind and generous and gracious and loving and maneuver around people. So sports in that regard was not my favorite thing, because I was like, who do you want me to be? I think we're raised to be in a village and be in a community, which is essential, and I love and thrive in community. But I think there's almost this assumption that others are the priority, and appeasing and making others happy, successful, so we don't have conflict, is the win. And so I don't know that we've given ourselves permission and the expectation that nobody cares but you. And so how do you truly own it? And then I think it's scary to feel like we actually are those people, and finding the balance to be assertive and to create and to have expectations, while at the same time being generous and gracious and loving. And that's a really tricky paradox. And I think that's a lifelong paradox, to figure out how do you own your life beautifully and graciously and boldly, while making space for the people around you as they're navigating their life. I think it's a very complicated, very intense pursuit.
I do too. I believe that. Here's another question for you. When in your life do you feel the most alive?
Um, Maybe it's because the soccer era wasn't my favorite era, but moving my body hasn't been the easy task of my life. It's not something I love. I have friends that it's like they're everything. I get caught when I am really diligent about it of getting in a perfectionist, personal competitive of like, well, I didn't do it today and I'm failing. I have found my seasons of life where I am moving my body because I choose to and want to is a reflection of I'm in a good emotional spot. And the emotions and the other things happening around me are in order, and then my body, it's delightful for me to move my body and to find my physical strength, and so I can name the seasons of my life: the 4th year teaching school, my 2 to 3 years in the middle with clay, that working with clay. I mean, I know exactly those seasons where I was feeling personally successful. Relationally, I was successful, like things were settled and I was feeling confident that I could then focus on my.
Oh, I like that a lot. When I move my body, I do it grudgingly sometimes. Sometimes it's okay. But it isn't something that maybe I just need to be in a better state, but it's not something I go, oh man, I'm going
I
to the
know.
gym this
Yeah.
afternoon.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna kick butt and
I'm gonna
take.
rock it. Yeah. And I have friends that will say the other way, that because when they own their physical movement, the other pieces fall in place. And I must have gotten in the wrong lines in heaven, because that is not how I am wired. They must have gotten in that one, and I got in this one of like, the other things have to be in order for me to have the courage and confidence to do my body stuff. So
I had the privilege of meeting Clayton a couple of times. And I have to tell you that I would put him in my top 10 list of people I don't know really, who I just go, that man is amazing. He just had
yeah.
this, he was so humble, and he just made you feel really at home. And
Yeah.
he's gigantic,
Yeah. Yeah.
and what, 6'10" or 6'11".
Yeah. Well, he was actually 6 foot, 6'8", and then he shrank a bit to 6'6".
Well, maybe I'm making a
But it
making a
seemed, but
legend.
he had to duck to go into doorways.
But I was just so impressed, and I've read a couple of his books, and he's
Yeah.
just, what a loss
Yeah.
for all of us,
No,
I
that's
think.
one of the things. I've been in conversations with Christine, his wife, and his daughter Anne, who runs his think tank research center, to just say how, and they've had the ideas and I had the ideas separately of, and then coming together of how do we create a space to talk about his theories again and bring the conversations back up. His door at Harvard Business School just had all of the dialogues coming in and out, and how do we create that space, because the theories he taught are in such need still. And how do we, in fact, because it was his birthday, I did an Instagram story yesterday, and somebody messaged me saying the world needs more Clay and Christine Christensen's, and I texted it, screenshot it and sent it to Christine and say, amen. How do we create a world of more? There was a Harvard Business School student one day that said, Emily, you do realize that we pay $200,000+ so that we can have one class with Clay Christensen, and you get to work with him all day, every day, and are getting paid. He's
Yeah,
like, do you realize? And I said, I do. I
yeah,
realize. I
yeah.
realize the gift that I have.
How do we, just a question that came into my mind, Emily, is how do we create situations, you as a new wife, new grandma, new mom, me as, bunch of kids, bunch of grandkids. How do we create situations where, like Clayton, that people feel comfortable and that there's an exchange of ideas?
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes I have to admit that I've come to a conclusion with what my grandkids are or aren't doing, and there's going to be no discussion. It's just like boom, I'm going to lay down the law.
Yeah.
To me, I love the mind's eye picture of students coming into his office. I
Mhm.
picture a book line, a bunch of books, and
Yeah.
bookshelves, and I also picture him just listening
Yeah. Yeah.
instead of, yeah,
Well, and I mean, instantly, his meetings were 15 minutes long.
really.
So he did a lot with a little bit of time, because he had so much. Harvard, like many other places, had just an expectation of like, there's these many hours of a day you're spending with teaching stuff. There's this many hours of the day you can do consulting stuff and do business stuff. And then this many other days you can do your own project stuff. And we did an analysis one time because somebody was like, you spend a lot of time doing XYZ, Clay. Well, reality was we were starting meetings at 6 a.m. and going to 7 p.m. for the bulk of the time I was with him. And so we were cramming in so many things, and they were literally 15-minute meetings, and he rarely did a lunch hour, and he rarely took a break. I mean, he loved the connections, he loved the conversations, and so people had to be quick and efficient so he was definitely willing to listen, but he also had to be quick and efficient because you only had 15 minutes with this man, and he knew his thoughts. I mean, we would kind of joke, but not joke, that it always went back to one of his core theories. And we needed an AI version of Clay to be like, what would Clay say? Because we knew it would be no matter what you brought in, there was a theory that he would refer to analyze the problem with. And I think there's something so beautiful to that, is that there was an efficiency. And then he got to go home knowing he'd given so much there, and he could turn work off, or he could then be thinking in the theories and talk about it with his kiddos because he knew the constraints and the kind of the perspectives he was going to share. And anyway, and he was very deliberate about different projects, like the grandkids will talk about a tree house, and they didn't really, in his mind, it was more fun to build the tree house because he could participate in that more than he could, I think, in playing in the treehouse.
It'd be difficult for him to come.
Right. A little too big for that treehouse. But I think the doing and the creating together, he really prioritized a great deal. As is Christine, she's a master gatherer, and those were huge priorities in their home.
So I've got a question, and I'm changing the age to meet our interview. Say a few years from now, when the Grandpa Channel has this vast reach.
Yes.
We're now at what, 527, I don't know. So we think big, and we've got the long picture. But if somebody were to watch your podcast, or you and me on this podcast, let's say they're 35 years old. Pick that number.
Yeah.
What would you like that 35-year-old, be it a male or a female, what would you like them to take away from, your podcast?
From the conversation. I'll give credit back to Clay because and I don't even know if it was a specific question, but he didn't get his PhD until he was 40.
Wow.
And so he demonstrated so beautifully that there are many career chapters and there are many chapters of life. And I think it gave me, which I would hope at 35, which I would hope anybody else at 35 in that conversation, to have this, to calm down and recognize there are at least 3 career chapters of life, and very different career chapters of life. And there's time and there's space, because even Clay leaving so soon and dying so young in his mid-60s, he did about 3 chapters of a career, and that's okay. And his came from failures of different places and different situations. And I just think there's something so beautiful. Julia Childs is that American woman that did the French baking, right? And cooking. She didn't start cooking and learning how to cook until she was 40. And there's just and yet that's how we know her. This passion that she gained later in life is how she changed the world. I just think there's oodles of chapters and there's oodles of time. And as cliche, but real, all of these things that one season will enhance the next seasons. And I wish I had known that even before, because I wouldn't have stressed so much about doing the right thing, but doing wonderful things.
So you have been, and I exaggerate not, you have been a fountain of wisdom. I mean, this is...
Wait, let's record that. Oh, we are recording it so that I can tell my family.
We're recording. I love what you're saying, because it all is not rooted necessarily in academic jargon or theories, but it's the school of hard knocks.
Yeah.
And we all go through the school of hard knocks.
Yeah.
So my final question for you today, I warned you a little bit about this, is what do you consider to be one or two, and I know you've got many, one or two of your superpowers? And I'm going to tell you about one superpower about me that you would never guess in a million bajillion years.
Yes, tell me more.
And when I was going through a really hard time financially, the kids
Mhm.
were in their late teens and down into 10. We just had some really bad financial times. And I received a call to serve for the LDS Church out at County Metro Jail every
Wow.
Sunday for 3 hours. And
Yeah.
initially I thought, why do I want to do
What's
that?
this? Yeah. Why would I say yes?
I just thought, but then a little voice told me, "What do you have to lose?
Yeah.
You're pathetic right now." So I said, "Okay, I'll do it." And then this is my superpower that came upon me suddenly. You go through all of these metal gates and
Yeah.
pass security, and we spend an hour and a half in maximum security every Sunday, going cell to cell alone. And so this is crazy. The metal doors open. It's two tiers, kind of
Yeah.
like two C's put on top of each other. And
Yeah.
you don't know whether you're visiting the zoo or whether you are the zoo.
Or the zoo. Yeah.
People are looking at you. And so then what I'm supposed to do is start at one end, and there are a couple of others starting at another end, and we go cell to cell to cell. Now, it's not the Green Mile bars, it's
Yeah.
plexiglass,
Yeah.
which gave me a little more, it didn't scare me that much, but I was scared out of my wits. But my superpower is that I turned into a showman
Oh,
in
interesting.
maximum security. I spent 2 years as an LDS missionary in Finland, marinating in
Yeah.
failure,
Yeah.
tracting door to door. And then I enter this supermax, they call it, or maximum security. And it's like I have this power.
You're
And
turned on.
I just took to it, and I had so much fun. I was
Amazing.
telling my wife the other night, I said, I could go into hopefully I speak the language because I don't
Yeah.
speak Spanish. But if I could go into I could go into any maximum security and go cell to cell. It's just in me, but I didn't know that it was in me.
Wow. I love that. I love that.
And
That's an amazing
I would
superpower.
come away absolutely energized, and
Yeah.
it's like I was walking on air when I came back and then collided with the reality that was my finances at the time. It's so, with that as kind of an introduction along, okay, I admit it,
No, no,
along.
no. A great example.
So, what do you think your superpower is? And it doesn't have to be something crazy
Yeah.
like that.
I I think one of them would be that have learned how to overcome the awkward, and the awkward is probably the best word. The awkward moments of starting something new.
Really?
Because we moved it around enough when I was younger that by the time I was in eighth grade, I was in like my fourth or fifth school. So I had to make friends very quickly, and it was on me because kids don't instantly bring you in. I mean, adults are the worst, but kids are tricky too. And so I think it's become a superpower that change doesn't scare me. In fact, change thrills me. And the newness and the navigating, because I've now have collected enough chapters. In fact, somebody was saying yesterday as we were talking, she's like, do you actually, I mean, so this question is so fun because she literally was like, do you realize that that is one of your superpowers? You have seen enough examples of a variety to go to a low income public school to a well-to-do charter school to see one side of this job. Like, I've done startups, I've done long-term big business. I've just seen a lot of versions of life, and so I have a toolkit to be able to navigate in the newness and to see options. I think the other superpower that I did in one of my jobs, there's a system called Culture Index that helps you know just who you are in the state of your mind and how you show up in the world, behavior traits. And I love to anticipate. I think I can anticipate what's coming down the road and see. Oh, do you remember that movie Sherlock Holmes
Mhm.
with the guy that plays Iron Man?
Oh,
And
Robert Downey?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And in his versions, there's a couple moments where it's all slow motion and you can, the fight scenes, and you can see what he's seen. And I'm definitely not to that level. But I do have a sense of like, okay, well, there will be this consequence or this consequence. And maybe it's because I've been in enough worlds that I can have a vision of what might come a couple steps in advance and have a toolkit to know how to navigate it. And I love connecting with people. To your point earlier of like,
Yeah,
I
that's a
love
superpower.
connecting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but I think the connecting has to be tied. I've been thinking about this week, that connecting and curiosity need to be tied by humility.
Yeah.
And then here's the big kicker, by love. Because if you don't feel like I care for you as a person, that I
Right.
love you as a person, then are
Right.
you going to be opening up? You're going to
Right.
shut,
Right.
at least
Right.
that's how it is with me.
Well, and with that, I feel like I realized years ago that I selfishly want as many experiences as I possibly can. I can only create. There's a line from Little Women where Joe March says, I could have been a great many things. And I think that of like, there's a lot of paths we all could have taken. And as we get older, I think we realize that could have been a really fun path. I wish I would have taken that one. And I wonder what I would have been had I taken that path. And so I want to learn from everybody to be like, you did take that path.
Yeah.
You learned things, just the point of your podcast.
Mhm.
You've learned things on your pathway that I will never get to experience. So teach me so that I can do better at my version of life, because I'm going to gain, just like reading a book. But we have all these books around us of humans. Teach me your versions of experiences and
And
I'll hopefully do
I
mine
think
better.
one of the strongest ways to do that is through stories. I don't know about
Yes.
you, but if
Yeah.
I hear a story, I can remember it forever.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
good
Yeah. Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
And so
Yep.
what we're hoping for on the Grandpa channel is it's a collection of stories.
Love it. I
What if
love it.
grandpas and grandmas and aunts
Yeah.
and uncles and siblings, what if we shared powerful stories with each other?
Yes.
I mean, isn't that a recipe for success and happiness?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think by not doing that, that's a recipe for disaster, because the
Well, and
stupid stories kind of win out.
right, right. And just the teasing, there's a woman named Brooke Romney who has some books about manners, but she's also made a book called The BFF Game. And it has been such, to your earlier question of like, how do we create moments together? It has been so sweet because the kids and the nieces and nephews of every age love it because they're getting to just share who they are in a quick little moment and be seen and validated. And then in our little new family, my husband's youngest son has had these friend groups that will do PowerPoint presentations of just things they know or interesting facts. And we did one a couple weeks ago, and the parameters were just teach us something new. And so we had a couple people give like mini book reports on books that they've really loved and the theories and the concepts have changed them. It was just so fun to find out things that mattered to each other. And whether it's stories or it's just gems like we're doing on the podcast, just teach us. Just teach us what you know and creating those spaces.
But don't we have to slow down, and don't we have to be open and humble to, listen instead of,
Yeah. Yeah.
I got this, I've
Yeah.
got to do real quick.
Yeah. Yeah. And to create the space for it. I mean, back to the clay, 15 minutes, but like, how do we set the space and have everybody prepared and create a community and a culture like that just
That,
takes a little bit of newness?
that's a fabulous idea, I think.
It was so fun. We loved it.
Well, I got to tell you, I have thoroughly enjoyed our discussion, and
Hey,
thank you so much. That's it for today's episode of the Grandpa Channel. If something you heard made you laugh, pause, or see life a little differently, pass it along. We're gathering the lessons people learned the hard way, the stories, the second thoughts, and the wisdom that only comes with time. And we'd love to hear yours. What did life teach you the hard way? Until next time, keep the perspective honest and the stories coming. I'm Rivers, and I'm out of here.